Hello, I'm Holly and I did the artwork for our game. So we were very proud of the art direction as we received lots of positive feedback during the check-ins. This feedback allowed us to replicate aspects of the art that people liked in other parts of our game, such as making more animal-inspired enemies. Something that worked better than expected would be the enemy animations. I hadn't really animated or drawn digitally before, so I watched lots of tutorials and I put most of my focus on making the enemies cute and animations look effective. A problem I had was when I made my original animations where the characters were drawn in a 2/3 position. This meant that they attacked the player character and it was hard to tell when they were charging their power up or about to attack. I ended up redoing the art so that they face forward and sort of sidestep instead of having a side view. This not only looked much better, but made it easier for the player to understand the enemy. Another problem I overcame was making for simpler character designs. It was difficult, tedious, and made the sprites blend in too much with the background, so I came up with a method of breaking them down into colour sets, such as green, orange, and purple. This would make it easier to identify them, but also make them more visually appealing. Some changes made include the art for the levels. We initially wanted to make our levels look as though they had different shape styles and objects for the player to jump on. However, this distracted from the game mechanic of using a grapple to navigate through the level. Ultimately, we chose to use a simpler design of repeated platforms. So this highlighted how pivotal art is in guiding the player, and while we like to look at nice things, it mustn't overwhelm or disturb the player experience. As mentioned, I learned how art in games must be practical just as much as it is pretty in order for the game to function as intended. Game art must serve and aid the player in progressing through the level by being clear and easy to understand. I really enjoyed doing the artwork for this game, and it was a pleasure to work on.
Hello everyone, my name is Gage Steederly. As a lead programmer and one of the lead designers for E-Day, I am thrilled to be here to discuss our journey in creating an immersive, dynamic gaming experience. From our initial brainstorming session, we were resolute about one thing. Our game needed an engaging and exhilarating traversal system. The idea was to create a game where the player wouldn't just passively move through the environment, but actively interact with it. After countless hours, coffees, and even debates, we finally zeroed in on the concept of the grapple hook system. Simon, my co-designer, and I spent weeks developing this system. We went through several iterations, tweaking, refining, and testing, relentlessly until we gave birth to the system we see today. The grapple hook system, with its two states, target and neutral, plays a pivotal role in E-Day. In the target state, players can latch onto specific targets scattered throughout the game, propelling themselves through the air in any direction that they desire. This introduces an element of thrill and adrenaline, enhancing the overall gameplay. In contrast, the neutral state is a little more subdued, yet equally crucial. It allows the player to engage in combat, albeit a little limited. However, player beware. Not every enemy can be grappled, adding an extra layer of challenge and strategy to the combat. As a lead programmer, my role transcended beyond just coding. I was entrusted with the responsibility to equip my team with the necessary tools to narrate the compelling story of E-Day. This involved developing intricate interactions both with enemies and the environment to create a seamless and captivating gaming narrative. In conclusion, our goal with E-Day was to create a game that was not just fun to play, but also posed a unique challenge to the players. With the grapple hook system, we believe we have achieved just that. We invite you to explore the world of E-Day and experience the thrill of the grapple hook, and most importantly, enjoy the game. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Simon, and I'm part of the programming team. So one of my main focuses was on the mechanics. So I'm responsible for the jumps, for example, or the running part, and I also implemented our basic physics system and the collisions. And I'd like to show them to you. So here are we in the game now, and our main character runs. and jumps with WASD. And there are three things I want to talk about. So first of all, we have air steer, so you're able to change your X velocity while you're jumping. Another thing that is supposed to make the gameplay more responsive is the so-called coyote time. So imagine you're on this platform and you're running off it and you're actually too slow with your button press. Then there's a small grace period where you're still able to perform a jump. So it looks like this. Here, you saw it. Actually, I'm too slow and I start falling, but then I can still do a jump for like 10 frames or so. Another thing is we implemented a sort of jump request time. So if you're jumping and you're in the air and you press the button too early, then we store the jump request for a small time, so you still perform a jump. One thing that I'm particularly proud of is the grappling hook. We wanted to have something special, a cool new mechanic that makes our game memorable, and we quickly decided that we want to have a grappling hook mechanic. So you jump and run through the level, and then there's a target, and then you should be able to swing around it like Spider-Man. Actually, it wasn't that easy to code this behavior, but eventually, we could solve the problem because I introduced polar coordinates, and now we have this beautiful swinging arc. So here in blue, we see already our target, and if we're close enough, we see it gets highlighted, so we know we are in grappling range, and then we can perform the grappling hook swing with the spacebar, at least in the default version. This enables a cool swinging gameplay, like this. In my opinion, what was good, what could be better? So first of all, I think we really succeeded in improving our game iteratively. We worked our visions for the game, but also things like the mechanics or the level design. And I think in the end, it turned out pretty good. Also, I believe that the dynamics in the team were very nice. So what would I do differently? I think the distribution of roles could be a little clearer, and also I would like to have more in-person meetings with the whole team where we can discuss our progress and future steps. What did I learn from this project? The biggest thing for me is probably the workflow with GitHub, because it is so easy there to combine all the different pieces from the respective team members to form a bigger, greater outcome. Yeah, and I will definitely take this knowledge and use it in my next project.
Hello, my name is Kenji Helms, and I'm the programmer who is responsible for the menu, UI, and the sound effects in the game. Instead of trying to focus on delivering some kind of profound experience to the user with the menu in the game, my goal was more just for the menu to be very simple, be intuitive, and do everything that the player expected it to without a second thought. The main menu simply has buttons to start a new game, enter the level select, enter the options menu, quit, and view the credits. These buttons do exactly what you expect them to, and there's not much of a need to examine them more closely. The options menu is where most of my work actually went into, since the buttons here are much more complicated than just a button that takes the game to a different screen. The keybind buttons, when clicked, have to listen for the player's keyboard input, and they also have to be responsible for making sure that the input is stored and actually used during the gameplay. The sound toggle buttons here are for turning either the music or the sound effects on or off for the whole game, and this is something that also has to be remembered and stored. It's important to note that all of these options that the player can change here persist through game restarts, which was actually quite a bit of a learning experience for me to implement, but in the end, I'm glad I did it, and I hope it's a smooth experience that the player can just take for granted. The in-game HUD is very simple, as it just consists of a health bar and a score counter, which are both very easy to understand. And in the transition levels, this same health bar display is just scaled down and shifted above the ship, which helps communicate that the ship's hit points are separate from the players. For the sound effect design, I wanted to make all of the sound effects very simple with a slight retro aesthetic. They're all made with a few simple sounds and tones layered on top of each other, and in the game they give key feedback to the player that meshes well with the visual feedback to provide good gameplay experience. While I did get a lot of things implemented the way I originally imagined, there were also some things that I wasn't able to get to because of time constraints. For example, the music and sound effects are simply toggled in the menu as opposed to having something more normal, like a pair of volume sliders. Overall, I've definitely gained a greater appreciation for the work that goes into making for a smoother and intuitive user experience in games, and I hope this game delivers on that.
Hi, my name is Jayton, and I was the primary level designer and game producer for E-Day. Our inspiration that we took for creating our game is we wanted a basic platformer, but as discussed earlier, we wanted to spice it up by putting a little bit of a grapple hook system in there so that the player could swing around and have a little bit more fun than just running and jumping. Part of the story behind this was the boss, Bill Zabufo, which you meet at the very end, had taken the college campus where the player goes to school. However, the professor says that we're still having an exam today, and so the player has to still go to school, go fly through everything, beat Bill Zabufo, and hopefully return his campus back to normal so that he can be able to take his exam, hence the name E-Day. As we were doing this, part of the narrative is as you get further and further in the game, the levels become more and more spread out, that there are more jumps you have to make, there are more grapple points you have to swing from to be able to traverse through the plane and get it to the next level. One of the main gameplay features we have in our game is as you go through the level, there will be a battery that you must collect and then get back to your spaceship to progress to the next level. When you do have your battery and you get into your ship, it will initiate a transition level where you will fly to the next area, dodging and shooting asteroids and enemy ships. And during this time, the player can rack up bonus points to be able to increase their score. One of the difficulties we ran into when we were creating the levels was enemy balance. We wanted to make sure that it was challenging enough, but not overly so that the player would get frustrated and therefore quit the game. One of the biggest enemies that we decided to create that caused a kind of bit of a problem was the character of Heavy. Heavy will trace the player and shoot directly at the player. The bullet will still go in a straight line, so we don't have any homing missile instances, making it therefore kind of frustrating. But Heavy's bullets will pass through the walls and go straight towards the player, making sure the player has to be on their toes in order to avoid losing health or even dying. On behalf of the team, I would just like to say thank you all so much for watching, for expressing interest in our game, and we hope you enjoy E-Day.